My sister hijacked my 21st birthday. I stood off to the side while they completely overlooked me. Months later, they understood what they had lost, but it was already too late. Crystal chandeliers glowed above the country club ballroom. White flowers spilled from every table centerpiece, and a 3-tier cake ruled the dessert table. Everything looked perfect for a 21st birthday celebration, especially mine. Except none of that night belonged to me anymore. I stood at the entrance, watching guests arrive with wrapped gifts and smiling faces. Have you ever felt like a ghost at your own party? Like you were erased from your own story? Because on my 21st birthday, the night that should have been all about me, I learned the hard way that some families just don't see you at all. And what happened next? Well, it shattered everything I thought I knew. My stomach literally twisted into knots as everyone walked right past me, heading straight to the receiving line where my family stood waiting. The dress I'd spent weeks choosing suddenly felt like sandpaper on my skin, and Mom's navy blue silk, which she swore would photograph brilliantly, just looked like a costume for someone else's perfect performance. "There's the birthday girl!" my Aunt Karen chirped, rushing past me with her arms wide open. For one stupid, hopeful second, I actually thought she meant me. Then I watched Mom embrace Olivia, my 23-year-old sister, who swirled in a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than my entire college fund. Mom materialized at my elbow, her face tight with that special brand of irritation she reserved just for me. "Why are you lurking over here?" she snapped, her voice low. "Go help your sister greet people. This is her special night." The words landed like a physical punch to the gut. "Her special night?" "Mom," I whispered, barely able to breathe. "It's my birthday. I'm turning 21 today." She waved her hand, dismissing me as if I were a fly, her eyes already scanning the room for more important things. "Olivia never had a real 21st birthday celebration because your father was unwell that year," she said, her voice dropping. "When she mentioned it a few months ago, we decided combining the parties would be more feasible. Don't be selfish about this." That word, selfish, it hung in the air between us, familiar and stinging. I'd heard variations of it my entire life. Whenever I dared to want anything that might conflict with Olivia's desires. Birthday celebrations rearranged for her college finals. Family vacations planned around her semester breaks. Christmas mornings postponed because she needed extra sleep after night shifts at the hospital as a physician assistant. "We could have just had 2 parties," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. Mom's laughter was cold, brittle. "Do you have any idea how much this venue costs? Be grateful we're celebrating you at all. Most parents wouldn't go through this trouble." Before I could even react, she vanished into the crowd, leaving me standing alone as servers glided by with champagne flutes and hors d'oeuvres. The DJ started playing a pop song Olivia loved, and I watched, numb, as my sister danced with Dad in the center of the room, everyone cheering. Nobody seemed to notice that the actual birthday girl was nowhere near the spotlight. My phone vibrated with a text from Megan, my best friend since middle school. "Running late? Could you please save me a seat at your table?" I looked at the seating chart on an easel near the door. Table 1. My parents, Olivia, Ethan, Olivia's boyfriend, Aunt Karen, and various family friends. My name was listed at table 7, tucked away in the back corner beside distant cousins I barely knew and my great-aunt, who was mostly deaf. The tears came before I could stop them. I ducked into the restroom, pressing cold paper towels over my eyes, trying to keep my makeup from running. The face staring back in the mirror looked so young, so foolish. How had I allowed myself to hope tonight would be different? Every milestone in my life had played out like this, with Olivia center stage and me waiting in the wings. When I re-emerged, the celebration was in full swing. Olivia was holding court at a table, surrounded by her hospital friends, all roaring with laughter at a story she was telling. Mom and Dad were nearby, beaming with pride. Then the cake was brought out, and I saw, with dull resignation, that it read, "Happy 21st birthday, Olivia," in a looping script. No mention of my name anywhere. "Excuse me." A waitress approached me with a tray of champagne. "Are you at the birthday party?" The question almost broke me. I grabbed a glass, even though I wasn't supposed to drink, and drained it in 3 desperate gulps. The bubbles burned my throat, but the tiny buzz helped take the edge off my shame. People around me danced, laughed, and celebrated someone who'd already had her moment 6 years ago. Olivia had used my real 21st birthday as a convenient excuse to relive her glory days. Eventually, Megan arrived. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a fierce hug. "What happened? You look devastated." I told her everything, a jumble of choked-back words. Her expression shifted from surprise to pure rage as she scanned the room, taking in every detail I had described. "Are you kidding me? This is insane. Where's your cake? Your presents?" "There!" I pointed to the gift table, overflowing with boxes and bags. Most of them have Olivia's name on the tags. People thought they were coming to her party. Megan grabbed my hand. "We're leaving. Right now." "I can't just leave my own birthday party." I protested weakly. "It's not your party anymore," she stated flatly, already pulling me towards the exit. "Come on. We'll go somewhere that actually appreciates you." I glanced back at my family. Mom was laughing at something Karen said. Dad had his arm around Olivia's shoulders. Looking at her with such obvious fondness, it physically hurt. Neither of them had looked at me like that in years. Maybe they never had. We were almost to the parking lot when Mom caught up to us. Her heels clicked sharply on the pavement, and her cheeks were flushed with anger. "Where do you think you're going?" she demanded, her voice tight. "You can't just abandon your sister's party." "My sister's party?" I repeated, the agony of the words like a fresh wound. "It was supposed to be mine." "You're being dramatic," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Get back inside and stop embarrassing this family." Something inside me snapped. A sudden, sharp crack, like ice fracturing under unbearable strain. "No." Mom's eyes widened. I had never defied a direct order from her before. "What did you say?" I said no, I stated, my voice shaking but firm. "I'm done. I'm leaving, and I'm not coming back." "Don't be ridiculous," she scoffed. "You're 21 years old with no job and no prospects. Where exactly do you think you'll go?" I had gotten into Stanford with a partial scholarship, entirely on my own. My parents had been too preoccupied managing Olivia's career to help with my college applications. My plan was to save money by living at home and commuting. That plan evaporated, right there in the country club parking lot. "I'll figure it out," I heard myself say, my voice more confident than I felt. "I've been figuring things out by myself for years anyway." Mom's expression shifted from angry to something that almost looked hurt, if I believed she was capable of caring that much. "If you walk away now, don't expect us to bail you out when reality hits. You'll have to survive on your own." "I've been surviving on my own my entire life," I shot back, the words burning. "You just never noticed." I jumped into Megan's car before Mom could answer. Through the glass, I saw her stand there for a moment, clearly torn between dragging me back inside and returning to her perfect party. The party won. She always chose what made her life simpler, and dealing with my emotions had never been easy for her. Megan drove us to a diner on the outskirts of town, with faded vinyl booths and humming fluorescent lights. We ordered pancakes, even though it was 9 p.m., and she let me cry into my coffee as I processed what I had just done. My phone exploded with texts from family members. Most were variations on the same theme. I was ungrateful, immature, selfish for ruining Olivia's night. Not one person asked if I was okay. "You can stay with me," Megan said, squeezing my hand. "My parents won't mind. They've got the guest room just sitting empty." I accepted. I had no other choice. That night, I packed my belongings into trash bags and left my parents' house while they were still at the golf club. They didn't get home until after midnight, and by then I was already gone. The next 2 years were the hardest of my life. I worked 2 jobs while studying full-time at Stanford, surviving on 4 hours of sleep and instant ramen. Megan's parents charged me a low rent and treated me with more kindness than my own family ever had. I kept my head down, focused on my academics, and slowly, painstakingly, built a life that was entirely mine. For the first few months, my parents tried to contact me. Mom left voicemails demanding I apologize to Olivia for ruining her celebration. Dad sent emails with subject lines like, "Time to come home," that I deleted unread. Eventually, the text stopped. They dismissed me as easily as they'd crossed an item off a grocery list. I switched my major to computer science after discovering an unexpected flair for coding. My professors appreciated my work, and by junior year I landed an internship with a small tech company downtown. It was modest but innovative, and they took a chance on me when bigger companies wouldn't. I threw myself into the job with the same fierce determination I'd used to survive, and it paid off when they offered me a full-time position before graduation. The firm specialized in data analytics software, and I joined their development team at just the right time. We were building something truly useful, a platform that helped small businesses make sense of their customer data without needing expensive consultants. My role focused on the user interface, making complex information accessible to those who weren't tech-savvy. It felt incredibly fulfilling to create tools that empowered people, perhaps because I knew what it was like to have no power at all. Lauren, my team leader, became an unexpected mentor. She was in her mid-30s, brilliant but never arrogant, and she saw potential in me that I didn't see in myself. During late-night debugging sessions, she'd share anecdotes about her own complicated family history. Her parents split when she was young, forcing her to navigate 2 households, vying for her loyalty. She knew what it meant to be stuck between unrealistic expectations. "You work like someone with something to prove," she observed one evening when I was the last person in the office. "But you don't need to prove anything to anyone except yourself." Her words stayed with me. I'd been operating under the assumption that success would somehow legitimize my decision to leave, that accomplishments would retroactively explain the agony of walking away from my family. But Lauren was right. I was seeking outward acceptance because I had never learned to validate myself. Around this time, I started therapy. With a full-time job and good benefits, my insurance covered mental health sessions. Lauren had even recommended her own therapist after seeing how hard I was pushing myself. Dr. Patricia Lawson was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a disarming ability to see right through whatever act I was putting on. During our first appointment, I spent 45 minutes explaining that I was fine and just dealing with normal stress. "Tell me about your family," she said, "in that way therapists do." Asking questions that seemed casual but cut right to the heart of the matter. I gave her the sanitized version first. Busy parents, a sister who got more attention, normal sibling rivalry stuff. Dr. Lawson listened without interrupting, her face calm but attentive. When I finished, she asked a single follow-up question. "When was the last time someone in your family asked how you were doing and actually waited for an honest answer?" I opened my mouth to speak, but then I realized I couldn't recall a single instance. The silence stretched between us, heavy with implications I wasn't prepared to confront. That's when I started sobbing, and once I started, I couldn't stop. 3 years of buried sadness spilled out in Dr. Lawson's office, and she simply sat there, offering tissues and letting me cry. Therapy became my lifeline. Week after week, I peeled back layers of dysfunction that I'd accepted because it was all I'd ever known. Dr. Lawson helped me understand that my parents' emotional neglect wasn't my responsibility. Olivia's behavior was a symptom of the toxic system I had escaped. She taught me about concepts like scapegoat and golden child, which finally helped me make sense of my childhood. Your parents created a dynamic where your sister was rewarded for simply existing, while you were punished for having needs. Dr. Lawson explained in one session. That's not normal sibling rivalry. That's structural favoritism, and it causes real psychological harm. Hearing it put so clinically, so clearly, helped me stop blaming myself. I had spent years wondering what was wrong with me that prevented my parents from loving me properly. Therapy showed me the problem had never been mine. They were damaged parents raising children in a dysfunctional system, and I had become collateral damage. My professional trajectory absolutely skyrocketed. The startup secured several significant contracts, and our team grew rapidly. I was promoted to lead developer 6 months after graduating, which came with a substantial raise. Suddenly, I was earning enough money not just to live, but to thrive. I started actively paying off my student loans, chipping away at a burden that had seemed overwhelming just months earlier. My first big purchase was a car. Nothing flashy, just a reliable vehicle that meant I no longer had to rely on public transportation. I drove it off the lot and sat in the parking space for 15 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, marveling at this concrete symbol of my independence. No one had co-signed for me. No one had given a single dollar. This car was entirely mine, earned through my own efforts. By the time I was 23, I was earning more money than I could have imagined. The startup had grown into something significant, and my early involvement meant I had stock options that would vest over the next few years, potentially worth a lot of money if the company continued its trajectory. I moved into my own apartment in a high-rise near the river, bought matching furniture, and started building the life my parents had always promised Olivia, but never me. My apartment became my sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the Chicago skyline, and some mornings I'd stand there with my coffee, watching the city wake up, feeling like I'd finally arrived somewhere important. I decorated thoughtfully, choosing items that reflected who I was, rather than who I believed I should be. Plants adorned the windowsills because I loved how they softened the modern lines. Books filled handcrafted shelves because reading had been my childhood escape. Art from local galleries hung on the walls because I wanted to support others creating something from nothing. Megan helped me host my first real dinner party in the new place. She had been my constant support through everything, and her family had become an example of healthy relationships. Her parents treated me like a second daughter, even attending my college graduation when my own parents didn't. They'd handed me a card with a generous check inside and a note that simply said, "We're so proud of you." I sobbed as I read those 4 words, realizing how much I'd craved them my entire life. "Look at you," Megan exclaimed, gazing around my apartment with obvious delight. "You did this, all of this, despite everything they put you through." "Because of everything they put me through," I corrected her. "I wouldn't have fought this hard if I'd had an easier path." It was true, even if admitting it felt raw. My parents' neglect had instilled in me a tenacity I wouldn't have otherwise possessed. I'd learned to rely entirely on myself, to trust my own judgment, and to achieve success through sheer grit. Those were valuable skills, even if I wished I'd learned them differently. Social media became a minefield during this time. I'd locked down my profiles after leaving home, but occasionally I'd slip up and see what my family was posting. Olivia's Instagram was a highlight reel of her seemingly perfect life. Romantic dates with Ethan, brunches with friends, and professional photos from her hospital role. Mom's Facebook page was filled with gushing posts about Olivia's achievements, each one a stark reminder of the accolades I'd never received. I trained myself not to look. Dr. Lawson called it protecting my peace, and she was right. Every time I looked at those pages, an old hurt would reawaken. Better to focus on my own life, my own accomplishments, and my own carefully crafted happiness. Work offered structure and purpose. Lauren promoted me to team lead when she took on a director position. Suddenly, I had 3 young developers reporting to me. The responsibility felt immense, but I tackled it the same way I did everything else, by working harder than necessary and refusing to fail. My team respected me, not because I commanded it, but because I genuinely cared about their development and success. "You're really good at this," Marcus, one of my developers, told me after I helped him debug a particularly tricky problem. Like, better than any manager I've ever had. His praise caught me by surprise. I just remember what it felt like to be starting out with no help, I admitted. I tried to be what I needed back then. That philosophy extended beyond my job. I started volunteering at a youth coding program for underprivileged kids, teaching teenagers from disadvantaged backgrounds the skills that had saved me. Watching those kids grasp concepts and light up with possibility felt redemptive, as if I was giving back what Megan's family had given me. Many of these kids came from situations far worse than mine, and their resilience humbled me. Ashley, a 15-year-old girl, brought back painful memories of my younger self. She was quiet and guarded, clearly intelligent, but believed she didn't deserve opportunities. Her parents were going through a messy divorce, and neither seemed truly concerned with her well-being. Her aloof posture and cautious remarks reminded me of my own story. "You're really talented," I told her one day after class. "Have you ever thought about studying computer science in college?" She just said no. Then Olivia called me out of the blue, her voice sharp with surprise. "You're seriously not coming to my wedding?" "I have a work commitment," I lied smoothly. "I can't get out of it." I had mastered the art of self-preservation. What job commitment could be more important than your sister's wedding? This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Actually, based on divorce rates, it probably wasn't, I thought, but I kept that to myself. "I'm sorry, I just can't make it." "This is about the birthday thing, isn't it?" she accused, a knowing edge to her voice. "You're still holding a grudge after 2 years?" The casual dismissal of my pain snapped something inside me. "You took my 21st birthday. You made it about yourself. And our parents let you do it. They've let you take everything from me my entire life. So no, I'm not coming to watch you have another perfect moment while I stand in the background, pretending to be happy for you." "You're being selfish," she shot back. That word again. Selfish. They always accused me of wanting anything for myself. "Maybe I am," I retorted, the anger finally breaking through. "But at least I'm open about it." I hung up before she could reply. My hands shook as I put the phone down, adrenaline coursing through me. I'd finally said what I'd needed to say for years, and it felt both freeing and terrifying. Mom called next, then Dad, then Karen. I let every call go to voicemail. Their messages followed a predictable pattern. Disappointment, guilt-tripping, accusations of sabotaging another family gathering. No one questioned why I had said no. No one entertained the possibility that I might have genuine reasons for keeping my distance. I blocked their numbers and went back to work. 2 months later, my company signed a massive client, truly putting us on the map in the tech industry. For the first time in my life, my stock options looked significantly more valuable and financial security felt genuinely possible. The local business journal did a profile on young professionals making waves in Chicago's startup scene, and they interviewed me for it. I spoke about overcoming hardship, building success from nothing, and the value of forging your own path even when others try to hold you back. The article went live on a Thursday. By Friday morning, my estranged family members had found ways to reach me via email, social media, and even had Karen show up at my workplace. The article itself had been more illuminating than I had anticipated. The journalist, Christina Wu, had asked probing questions about my journey. She wanted the human interest angle, the hardship that led to achievement. I had been careful not to mention my family explicitly, but anyone who knew me would recognize the narrative. What drove you to succeed? Christina had asked during our interview at a downtown coffee shop. I had considered sanitizing my response with generic business speak, like passion and hard work, but her genuine curiosity compelled me to be honest. I wanted to prove that I could create something worthwhile without the support most people take for granted. I'd confessed. I wanted to show that being underestimated doesn't define your value. The published essay included several quotes from me. There were photos of me at my workstation, laughing with my development team, standing in front of the city skyline. The headline read, "From Survival to Success, How One Developer Built Her Empire Alone." Christina had woven my story into larger themes of self-made professionals, generational shifts in family dynamics, and the growing number of young people forging their own paths. My phone started vibrating before I'd even finished reading the online version. Text messages from former high school friends I hadn't spoken to in years. LinkedIn connection requests from people in my industry. And buried amidst the congratulations and networking attempts were messages from family members who had somehow slipped through my carefully constructed barriers. An email from Dad's work account arrived first. "Very proud of what you've accomplished. Would love to discuss the article over coffee. Your success deserves to be celebrated properly." The irony that he wanted to celebrate me now, after years of silence, did not escape me. He'd had countless chances to be proud when I was struggling, when a single word of encouragement might have changed everything. He'd hoarded his pride until I no longer needed it. Mom's email came from her book club account because I'd blocked her main address. The article made it sound like we abandoned you. That is not fair or accurate. We gave you all we had. Please call me so that we may discuss this discreetly. Everything they had. The sentence made me laugh, a bitter, hollow sound. They had given Olivia everything they had. I had gotten the leftovers, the crumbs, the afterthoughts. And now that I had succeeded despite their indifference, they sought to rewrite history and take credit for my tenacity. "Your mother is devastated," Karen told me in the foyer of my office building as I waited for security to escort her out. "That article made it sound like they abandoned you." "They did abandon me," I stated, my voice shaking with years of pent-up emotion. I left home at 21, and none of them tried to figure out why. They were just upset that I wouldn't go along with their ideal of the perfect family. Karen's expression crumpled with pain. She'd always been the family peacekeeper, smoothing over disagreements, pretending that chaos was normal. Seeing her forced to confront reality was surprisingly satisfying. "You don't understand the pressure Olivia's been under. She's had to live up to such high expectations, and I haven't." The words exploded out of me, louder than I intended. Other people in the foyer were staring now, but I no longer cared about making a scene. Did anyone ever consider that maybe I had potential, too? That maybe I could have been something special if you'd all given me half the attention you gave Olivia? Karen looked between us, clearly weighing whether to keep pushing. The security guard waited patiently, accustomed to such situations. I watched, as she realized she'd lost this particular battle. "Just talk to your mother, please. She's not sleeping. This has been so hard on her." The sheer audacity of making Mom the victim in this scenario almost shattered me. Hard on her? She's had 3 years to reach out, to apologize, to show any interest in my life. Instead, she waited until a public article made them look bad. That's not love, Karen. That's damage control. Karen left without another word. I stood in the lobby, trembling with adrenaline and rage, acutely aware of curious eyes on me. My company's head of human resources emerged from the elevator bank, having clearly witnessed at least part of the confrontation. "Everything okay?" she whispered gently, drawing me aside. "Family drama," I said, a dry laugh escaping me. "I'm handling it." She nodded empathetically. "Take the rest of the day. Go home. Decompress. Do whatever you need to do. You're no good to us running on emotional fumes." I wanted to argue, to prove that I could power through anything, but the genuine concern in her eyes made me realize she was offering support, not questioning my competence. "Thank you," I murmured. Security returned, and Karen left without further discussion. I walked up to my office, told Lauren I needed to go, and wept in my car for 15 minutes before driving home. The tears surprised me with their ferocity. I thought I was past allowing my family's rejection to hurt me. But reading their notes, hearing Karen justify their actions, it brought back every childhood instance when I needed them and they weren't there. Birthday parties they forgot to pick me up from. School performances where they arrived late and left early. Report cards that got a cursory glance, while Olivia's produced celebratory feasts. I drove home in a trance, the city blurring beyond my windows. My phone continued to chime with alerts, a constant reminder that my private sorrow had become semi-public information. Several former teachers had contacted me, expressing remorse that they hadn't realized how bad things were. A high school guidance counselor sent a note saying she'd always wondered what happened to me after graduation. The most unexpected message, though, was from Olivia's boyfriend, Ethan. His message was brief, saw the article. "I'm sorry for everything. You deserved better." I stared at those 8 words for a long time. Ethan had always been kind to me during our few interactions before I left, but he had never gotten involved in the family dynamics. None of the partners or spouses ever did. They remained cautiously neutral, hesitant to jeopardize their standing by calling out any partiality. His apology felt genuine, but it also raised questions. Did Olivia read the article? What did she say about it? Was she furious, defensive, or perhaps, for the first time, ashamed of how she'd contributed to my isolation? I got home and looked at my apartment. I saw it, truly saw it, for the first time in months. The furniture I'd picked, the art on the walls, the books on the shelves. Everything reflected the choices I had made for myself. This space held no trace of my family's influence. I had built this life on my own, and I had done a damn good job of it. But standing in my beautiful apartment, surrounded by proof of my accomplishments, I felt hollow. The achievement felt less meaningful without someone to share it with who truly understood the journey. Megan and her family celebrated me, and I was so grateful for them. But a part of me still craved recognition from the people who had raised me, even though they had long forfeited the right to offer it. Dr. Lawson would say this is natural, that children are programmed to want parental approval, even if their parents don't deserve it. She'd tell me that healing doesn't mean the wound stops hurting completely. It just means you learn to live with the scar. I made tea and lay down on my couch to read through all the messages in order. Most were congratulatory. A few were from people trying to network their way into my company. Several came from distant relatives, shocked that things had gotten so bad in my family, as if they hadn't been there for most of it. Then my phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "It's me." Olivia's voice seemed altered, smaller somehow. "Can we talk? Really talk? Not just that surface-level coffee meeting." I should have said no. Every instinct screamed at me to defend the boundaries I'd fought so hard to build. But some naive part of me imagined that maybe, just maybe, we could eventually find our way to something like a real relationship. "Fine," I said, a sigh escaping me. "But I choose the location and you come alone." We met in a park near the lake, neutral ground where neither of us had a home advantage. Olivia looked exhausted, her makeup unable to conceal the dark circles beneath her eyes. She'd lost weight, and her engagement ring glinted in the afternoon sun as she nervously twirled it around her finger. "I read your article," she said without preamble. "Is that really how you see us? Like we destroyed your life." "You didn't destroy my life," I corrected her flatly. "You just made it harder than it needed to be." "I never intended." She paused, as if reconsidering her words. "Okay, that's not true. I did intend to take your birthday party. Mom suggested it, but I jumped at the chance because I was jealous." The admission stunned me so much that I just stared at her. "Jealous? Of what?" "Of me." Olivia gave a short, bitter laugh. "You always had this freedom I never got. You could mess up and nobody cared because they weren't expecting anything from you anyway. Meanwhile, I had to be perfect every single second. Straight A's, perfect job, perfect boyfriend. The pressure never stops. When I turned 21, Dad was in the hospital, recovering from heart surgery. Mom was stressed and exhausted. My birthday got pushed aside, and I pretended it didn't matter, but it did. So, when she suggested sharing yours, I jumped at it. So, you dealt with your pressure by making sure I had no support at all, I summarized, and not tightening in my stomach. I dealt with it by making sure I always had the spotlight, she confessed, her voice barely audible. If everyone was looking at me, they couldn't see how terrified I was of failing. She rubbed her eyes, smearing her mascara. I'm sorry. I should have said that 2 years ago, but I was too proud. I'm sorry for taking your birthday. I'm sorry for never standing up for you when Mom and Dad treated you like an afterthought. I'm sorry for all of it. The apology came out differently than I had ever imagined. I'd played this moment out countless times in my head, always seeing myself triumphant and unaffected. But hearing genuine guilt in her voice caused the wall of rage I'd been holding to fracture. I appreciate you saying that, I said, my voice thick. But an apology doesn't undo 2 years of radio silence. I know, she murmured. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did now, and I hate myself for it. We sat in silence for a while, watching joggers pass and dogs chase tennis balls. The city flowed around us, unconcerned with our modest family drama. Are you really not coming to the wedding? Olivia asked, breaking the quiet. I can't, I admitted. Being around Mom and Dad, pretending everything's fine, watching them celebrate you again, while I'm just supposed to smile and play along? I can't do it. It would undo all the progress I've made. What if it wasn't like that? She asked, her voice gaining a surprising edge of determination. What if I told them they had to actually acknowledge what they did wrong before you'd even consider coming? They'll never do that, I scoffed. They don't think they did anything wrong. Olivia rose, brushing grass from her jeans. Then maybe it's time someone made them see it. I wasn't sure what she meant, so I let her go without asking for more details. We shared a quick hug that felt less theatrical than any we'd exchanged before, and I watched her walk back to her car with a tiny spark of hope kindling in my chest. 3 days later, the calls resumed, but this time they weren't furious. Mom left a voicemail asking if we could meet for lunch. Her voice was hesitant, unsure, in a way I hadn't heard before. Dad sent an email with a subject line, I owe you an apology, that was many lines long, unlike his typical 2-sentence replies. Karen texted that she'd been thinking about our chat. I ignored them all for a week, needing time to comprehend this sudden shift. Whatever Olivia had said or done had clearly broken through my family's carefully crafted denial, but I wasn't sure I had the stamina to deal with the fallout. Then Olivia emailed me a video. It was shaky phone footage from what looked like a family dinner at my parents' house. The phone was tilted to capture the dining room table where Mom, Dad, Ethan, and Olivia were seated with dishes in front of them. Olivia had clearly set up her phone intentionally, likely propped against something on the sideboard, judging by the wobbly start. The timestamp indicated it was filmed the night after our park conversation. I need to say something, Olivia announced to the table, her voice clear and firm. And you're all going to listen to the entire thing before anyone interrupts. The video ran for 17 minutes. Olivia systematically dismantled every justification my parents had ever used for treating me as an afterthought. She brought up specific incidents I had almost forgotten, anniversaries that had been overshadowed, achievements that had been downplayed, times when they had prioritized her comfort over my fundamental needs. She described how they had used emotional manipulation to keep me subservient, making me feel selfish for wanting anything that inconvenienced them. Mom tried to interject numerous times, but Olivia cut her off each time with a sharp, I'm not finished. Dad sat there, looking increasingly uncomfortable, his face flushed with an emotion I couldn't quite identify through the blurry footage. You broke her. Olivia cried at the end, her voice shaking with righteous anger. You damaged your own daughter because you were too lazy to love both of us equally. And when she tried to tell you how much you had hurt her, you blamed her for being overly sensitive. You owe her more than just apologies. You owe her years of therapy expenses, wasted opportunities, and the childhood she should have had. The video ended with Mom sobbing and Dad sitting in stunned silence, Ethan's hand reaching into the frame to grip Olivia's shoulder before the screen went black. I watched it 3 more times, each viewing bringing new waves of emotion. Anger at my parents for needing someone else to explain my pain before they believed it was real. Gratitude to Olivia for finally using her golden child status to advocate for me. And grief for the relationship we could have had if she'd found the courage sooner. My phone rang, Olivia's number flashing on the screen. "Have you watched it?" she asked when I answered. "Yeah," I admitted, my voice still raw. "I know it doesn't change anything," she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "But I wanted you to know I meant what I said at the park. I'm done enabling them." "What did they say once you stopped recording?" Mom tried to rationalize everything. Dad agreed they'd made mistakes, but he still tried to downplay the severity of it, Olivia explained, a sigh escaping her. "I told them that until they genuinely examined their actions and made true atonement, I would restrict my contact with them as well." She paused. "I canceled the big wedding we had planned. Instead, we're having a small ceremony at City Hall. Fewer people, less stress, and no performance required." Her voice broke slightly. "You were right about everything. I was so focused on meeting their expectations that I became part of the problem. I don't want to be that person anymore." We talked for another hour, truly talking this time, delving into years of dysfunction and missed connections. It wasn't easy, and we didn't always agree, but it felt authentic in a way our relationship had never felt before. Over the next 2 months, my parents made awkward attempts at reconciliation. Mom suggested coffee dates where she actually asked about my life rather than just Olivia's. Dad sent articles about my industry, showing he'd been paying attention to my career. Karen admitted she'd always known the favoritism was wrong, but didn't want to rock the boat. And none of it magically fixed the damage. I still flinched when Mom criticized me, and I felt a surge of old resentment when Dad praised Olivia's accomplishments. But slowly, painfully, we began to build something like a functional family dynamic. The real shift happened on my 22nd birthday, over a year after the article was published and many months into our family's arduous reunion process. I hadn't planned anything special. I was too used to disappointment to bother celebrating. But that morning, Olivia showed up at my apartment with balloons and coffee from my favorite cafe. "Get dressed. We're going out." "I have work." "I already cleared it with your supervisor. Come on." She had planned an entire day around things I enjoyed. Brunch at a place I'd mentioned in passing. A matinee showing of a movie I'd wanted to see. We went shopping at bookstores instead of the boutiques she favored, and we ate at a restaurant that served spicy cuisine that she despised but I loved. As the sun began to set, we found ourselves sitting on the same bench in the same park where we'd had our honest conversation months before. This time, the silence between us felt natural rather than imposed. "Thank you," I blurted out, tears pricking my eyes. "For today, for the video, for finally seeing me." "I should have seen you all along," she replied, her voice soft. "I'm still so sorry it took so long." My phone buzzed with messages from various family members wishing me a happy birthday, including one from my mother, who shared a photo of the cake she'd baked. A simple vanilla one with my name spelled perfectly in frosting. Dad's message expressed pride in the woman I'd become. And Karen sent a ridiculous gif of dancing animals that made me smile despite myself. They were small gestures, nothing that could compensate for years of neglect, but they were genuine efforts from people who were finally trying to do better. I couldn't forgive everything, and I might never fully trust them again, but I could acknowledge the attempts and see where they led. "Are you happy?" Olivia asked abruptly. Are you honestly satisfied with your life? I thought about my apartment, my career, the connections I'd forged, and the freedom I'd fought so hard for. Yeah, I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. Yeah, I actually am. You deserve to be. We sat there until the streetlights came on. Two sisters who had spent years hurting each other, finally learning to coexist. It wasn't a fairy tale ending where everything was perfectly resolved, but it was honest, messy, and real in a way our relationship had never been before. My family didn't fall apart because of Olivia's confrontation. Instead, it slowly started to strengthen as we all stopped pretending the dysfunction didn't exist. We started having weekly dinners where people actually listened to each other instead of just waiting for their turn to talk. Mom began seeing a therapist to work through her favoritism patterns, and Dad made an effort to attend my work events the same way he'd always shown up for Olivia's. Progress was slow and imperfect. Some days I wanted to yell at them for wasting so many years, and other days I was just grateful we'd made it this far at all. That disastrous 21st birthday, the one that pushed me away, eventually forced all of us to confront things we'd been ignoring for decades. 2 years after leaving that country club, I stood in front of the mirror in my apartment, getting ready for Olivia's little city hall wedding. I was wearing the navy blue silk dress for my 21st birthday because it fit better now. Broken in, comfortable. The woman looking back at me bore little resemblance to the heartbroken teenager who'd fled her own party. She looked stronger, harder in some ways, but also more certain of who she was and what she deserved. She'd experienced abandonment and built something beautiful from the wreckage. She discovered that the people who loved you didn't always know how to express it, and that sometimes you had to teach them. Olivia texted me, "Thank you for coming. It means everything." I grinned and grabbed my coat. The family waiting for me at City Hall wasn't perfect. We still had years of repair, work ahead of us, but they and I were finally trying. And sometimes that's all you can ask for. So, tell me, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever felt like you had to choose between your family and your own well-being? I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.